Well, hey Crosskart fans. So here it is, the number 27, the one that started it all. We got it in here. We're going to do some maintenance. We're going to do some upgrades. Now, I've learned a lot from building crosskarts. I told my wife that I was always going to build two. And the reason for that is because I didn't know exactly how to build one. And there's only so much you can imagine and measure before actually having something tactile to work with. So this was the one I built, this was the one I designed, and then I learned everything from this. Now this is still one of the fan favorites. It's so easy to drive, it's so fun. It's got a ton of torque, it's got reverse. You can do anything you want with it. You can feel really good driving it. So I'm going to apply what I've learned from building crosskarts back to the prototype, to the proof of concept. Those things include steering. Steering is super wobbly in this. Second thing is the shifting. Now the shifting, from one of my favorite shows, is whenever he gets a car that's got bad bushings in the shifter, a wooden spoon in a bucket of gravy. That's what this shifter is. It still shifts, it still works, but it can be better. So I'm going to apply everything I've learned back to this. So let's get started. Let's get this thing race prepped. All right, so here's the first update, and it's the steering. Now the steering in this works just fine, but it can be better as I've learned. What's going on here is that I did not put a second heim joint on the forward steering. So what that does is it makes this U-joint very, very sloppy. You can't just expect to have one steering shaft support and have your steering be nice and stiff and tight. So I'm going to add this in just like on the later models that you've seen. So this has to come out all as one piece, whereas the later models you can break it apart and you don't have to take apart the whole cart just to get the steering out. So, as you've seen from the video, I got a 5/8 36 spline to a 3/4 inch output. Now it's going to be welded on this because it's not splined, it's not double D, but the disassembly point is at the center U-joint. So I've got some 3/4 inch double D. Now I couldn't find any stainless. I don't know why. Usually I can, but I couldn't find any, so I had to get just plain steel. I highly recommend getting stainless steel. As you can see, after a couple years, this is rusted pretty badly. I didn't paint it. I probably could have painted it. I'll probably end up painting this just because of what's going on here. Alright, so we're going to need to get our steering adapter off of here so I don't have to buy a new one. Now I remember when I test drove this, I had like one little tiny tack on this and it broke during the test drive. So there was no steering. It was pretty funny. Anyway, let's get that cut off. Alright, so I got the second steering support in there. Pull these brake lines, get them out of your way. Now we just need to figure out a good place to mount the tab for it. This is kind of the ideal spot here. Gives good clearance for the brake pedal, and looks like the steering angle is going to be very, very nice. Right now, I have put back in the dash because the steering is now removable. All we'd have to do is take this bolt and it slides out that way, and then pop this off, and the rest of it comes out. To get around this one, you just undo this side. So it's all completely rebuildable, repairable, but these times are all pretty stout. I haven't had any issues with them. So the reason I put the dash back in is because we need to test fit it. Since we can change the angle of this now, we have to make sure that it is exactly where we want it. All right, so just gonna do a little test fit and make sure the wheel is in the same or similar position. Now we do have a little bit of adjustment. It's definitely lower than it was. It's doable. It's too long. It's too far towards me. It needs to be a couple inches in, but that's easy. All we need to do is pull the main shaft and trim actually the exact amount off. Because of how the geometry is, you can set this up exactly where you want it. 3 inches off. Eek. I don't have another steering shaft. Now I am going to go ahead and tack this in before I shorten that shaft because I don't want to lose this position. It's perfectly centered, and the angle is acceptable for me. Now it's all set in place. It's not going anywhere. Removal is easy. Just loosen up these, and you can just pull the shaft right out the front. Let's check it out. Yep. That's how I remember it feeling right there. Gear shift is right next to the wheel. The only thing is, the shorter you go, the closer you get to your knees. If your steering wheel's in your pocket right here, you have plenty of room to get all the way around the wheel. Probably went a 1/4 inch too far, but it's going to work out really well. All right, we've got one more thing to weld, and from the seat, I thought I went a 1/4 inch too far. Well, since we're welding this, we can put our fine-tune adjustment right at this joint and on this weld. Well, and there we have it. Steering is now super sturdy. The only play we're getting now is from the actual rack itself. Having it unsupported like that wreaked havoc on the pinion gear, I guess it would be. So I don't see a need to get a new rack because there's really not that much. I mean, this is very, very nice. So this is going to make this drive a lot better. It's going to make it even easier to drive without all that play. On to the wooden spoon and the bucket of gravy. All right, so for the shifting, we're gonna have to pull the body panels off, pull the seat out to get to the shifting that goes on behind the seat. Now I don't really like pulling the body off of this one because I used, I think, M6 rivet nuts, and I was just new to it, so they all come out really hard. The alignment's not perfect, so some of them are bound up. I mean, it gets in place and it does what it's supposed to, but it's just a pain when I gotta take it off. Luckily, I haven't had to take it off for anything. There's been minimal maintenance on this. This thing is just performed flawlessly. Like, I've just changed the oil. I fixed it after a crash. Somebody rolled it. Somebody that was 6'4" was in this thing and aggressively flipped it. It was on a dry lake bed, and the sand that's normally there was super soft, and he chased the dragon. He got excited, the adrenaline hit him, and he just went full bore. Got to third gear, and he cut the wheel, and that front tire dug into that soft, loamy sand, and it just tipped it right over. He didn't stand a chance. The dude was not hurt at all. All he needed after he landed was a drink. It was incredible because these things are tight and he's tall. So when it started flipping, I was pretty nervous, to say the least. But yeah, he was wearing a helmet. I make everybody wear a helmet because this will smash your head. I think he was also hitting the brakes, which, as you guys know, you really don't hit the brakes in a corner because it destabilizes the vehicle. Blah, 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 blah. It was a full-on airborne flip. This thing was completely upside down, two or 3 feet up in the air. It was pretty scary, but he landed. It bent the front left A-arm, didn't mess with any of my welds or bend the chassis at all. It bent the radiator, but not enough to make it leak, and it destroyed the wing. I was able to actually drive it back. You know, the left front wheel was all cambered out and all crazy, but I had to do a river crossing. Yeah, let's get the body panels off, get this shifting done. Story time is over. All right, so to give you guys a better look at this, you can see that the side play is in the mount. So I put a spring in this to help center it. And one of the screws popped out, so that's not working like it should anymore. So it's not self-centering. But beyond that, you can see here, I put a plate on the back, and I used bearing blocks, or pillow block bearings, whatever you want to call them. And since then, I've come up with a way better way to do it. These tabs are welded onto this metal rod. I've switched to aluminum, which gives more authority to the stick. And I use steering support shafts, all 3/4, lightweight. And the rings on the end are adjustable if you've seen the torque tube shifter video. So I'm basically just going to update this to the current spec. Yeah, this was a fun day. So the bottom of this is held in with zip ties currently. The bolt broke because it was just a self-tapping screw. Destined to break. Drove it with the screw broken and this wobbling loose, and it finally bent this bracket out enough to where the gears weren't engaging very well. So zip tied it in, and it's been like that for about a month. Yeah, kept driving it. When I went to fix it, I saw that this needed upgraded, so that's when I ordered all the parts to do it. All right, so the takeaway from this is don't use junk. It's not junk. It's all good. From the car world, if your shifter is heavy, your gears shift better and faster, and you get more positive engagement. So that's why I used heavy steel. I used pillow block bearings because I didn't know any better. But obviously it all rusted. I could have painted it, but the clearances for those pillow block bearings are tight. They're not a slip fit. So the current is an aluminum 3/4 inch tube, 2 3/4 inch steering heim joints. I just call them heim joints. 3/4 inch heim joints, 2 3/4 inch retainers, and then 2 3/4 inch steel split retainers, tension retainers, whatever you want to call them. We're going to weld tabs to this. Now, I'm not going to go over the entire build again. I did the full build start to finish of the torque tube shifter assembly, bike shift on the left, Americans shift on the right. So converting it to a right-hand sequential shift was super important to me. So if you want to check it out, I'll put the link for the shift video here on a card or whatever, and you can check that out. Otherwise, I'm going to get this all installed and I'll show you the highlights. All right, so while that paint's drying, let's take a look at this gear shifter. Now, my guess is that the hole in the shifter itself is too big. This is definitely not tight. I've got polyurethane washers in there, or plastic washers, bushings, whatever you want to call them. I think I'm just going to put a bigger bolt in there, see if that reduces the side play. All right, so it turns out the bolt is the correct size, but the plastic washers I was using are pretty beat up and they're pretty small. On the subsequent builds, I used bigger nylon washers. That way we can put a little grease on and make them really, really slick against each other. All right, well, that was the ticket. The side play has been pretty much eliminated. I don't really count that as side play for a long stick being bolted in. I did reinstall the spring just because it's already in there and because it's been working really great. So why delete something that's working? Now, the only washers I had are 1/8 inch, so I may go back and get 1/16 inch thick nylon washers so I can put them on either side. But for now, man, this is better than ever. Well, that fixes the gear shift. Yep. So now what's left is cleanup and reassembly, and I hate to do it. I really hate to do it, but we're probably going to take a test drive just to make sure we improved. Not that we can undo everything, but I'm sure it's going to be better.